Hello, Gino here, and you are listening to Otherworld Connections. We live in a critical time where now, more than ever, angels and fairies, hidden forces, are bursting at the seams of the veil to work with us. They want to see us change in order to save the world and live in service to others. So join me on a journey to empowerment and enlightenment with an angelic angle and a fairy focus, looking into ways to improve our current situation, morality, archetypes, solutions for self-healing, and spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions.
Hello. Welcome back to Otherworld Connections. And in today's show, we'll talk a little bit about tarot. I'm going to do a Oracle of the Trees reading. Because I have been hanging out with the trees, dude. So I'm doing an Oracle of the Trees reading. And I'll be doing if we have time, a message from the she. The Tarot of the She. Yeah. Fun is a 3-letter word. Please consider donating to Revolution.radio, because other hosts talk a bit more professionally than me, and you should support us. It's listener supported, and there are ways that you can donate. You can donate through Patreon. You can do snail mail in US currency. You can do a direct payment through Auto Books, and that option is restricted to the United States and Canada only. And you can pay through cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. You can donate through DonorBox, an international alternative to PayPal. And these are all options that you can find through our website, revolution.radio, on the homepage or in the donations section. You can also consider advertising on the homepage for the paltry sum of $25 US a month. Pretty good. And just a reminder, you can find a link to anything I read or refer to in the show in the description of this episode once it's published on my website, thesecretkindergarten.com, and of course on all my channels, YouTube, so on and so forth, otherworldconnections.substack.com, Odyssey, Rumble, and it just has a straight up podcast. So let's figure out what to do, what is best to do, how to heal, how to change, how to achieve goals and live successful lives of service by making those otherworld connections. Just kidding, guys. All right, we're going to read a little bit about the history of the tarot from the book Creative Tarot, A Modern Guide. A modern guide to an inspired life. And when you understand about the first principles, do no harm and don't allow harm to be done to yourself or others. And, natural law principles, often talked about as hermetic principles. When you understand that, government is just a load of poo-poo, and that we are supposed to internally govern ourselves as individuals, then we don't need things like naughty police and naughty governments. When you know all that, the door is wide open to who are you? What are you here to do? And that's a question usually people ask first, or people go to first, and That's where you get this confusion between the New Age movement or New Age concepts and more objective spiritual things. But once you have the once you're aware of the objectives or the objectivity in our reality, then yeah, you can kind of do whatever you want because you know the rules. There are compromises, of course, and you are restricted to. But if you understand the difference between right or wrong, what I'm trying to say is the rules are one thing. Are you going to live by them? And if you live by them, what are you going to do living by them? And I'm just saying, things like tarot, all kinds of things that are out there and considered to be woo-woo, are the tools that go in your toolkit, spiritual tools, because you understand everything else that's going on. So, yeah, The Creative Tarot, A Modern Guide to an Inspired Life by Jessa Crispin. We're just going to look at the history of the tarot. Just want to make sure I am, yep, we're there. Yes, indeed. Moving to history. Oh, I'll just click that. There we go. The history of the deck we recognize as the tarot. The deck that includes both the minor arcana and the 22 characters and archetypes of the major arcana begins in 15th century Italy. But the tarot came in many different varieties, even from the very beginning. There was a Florentine deck called the Minchiate, with its 40-card major arcana set. Ooh. And a deck from Milan called the Trionfi, that used 4 types of birds. Go birds, go, rather than the 4 elements of the standard deck. Many parts of its origins remain frustratingly obscure. For example, what does the name tarot mean? No one really knows. Well, Mark Passio talks about that. T-A-R-O. And variations of the letters T-A-R-O. That all escapes me now, but it kind of infers God. No one really knows that, although there are many theories. It comes from the Italian word tarocco, which is the name of the card game that the deck was originally used to play. In Italy they have tarocchi, which is, yeah, a deck of cards. But the word seems to have no other meaning associated with, well, it does. I'll have to find the link to that, and I'll post it in the description. There is a type of blood orange called the tarocco, but it's unlikely that the deck was developed as a way of thinking about citrus. Oh my gosh, this book is dry. The tarocco cards were simply another version of playing cards which were designed and played with all over the world, dating back to 9th century China. They spread from there to Egypt, Persia, Turkey, and beyond. Each culture adapted the cards to create decks of their own and designed different games to match. You might have noticed how the minor arcana resembles our own standard deck of playing cards with its aces. The numbers are up to 10, and then the royalty cards. The knight becomes the jack, the page is discarded. The queen and king remain the same. Even the suits match up, hearts to cups, and so on. Each deck shares a similar origin. So why is one deck used for these mysterious, sometimes occult purposes, while the other is used for play? The game cards were designed for the tarocco has been lost to time. You don't see people playing it anymore. You can get the cards, though, in Italy, if you go to a tobacconist. Oh, dear. But even as people lost interest in the game, the deck remained. As the tarot cards spread and were adapted by different cities and different cultures, new variations appeared. We still have many examples of these early decks, and many of the distinctive choices of imagery were developed in the 15th century and are still found in contemporary decks. The distinctive shape of the hanged man's legs forming a number 4, with one straight leg and one bent knee, can be found in the 15th century Visconti Sforza deck. The pierced heart of the 3 swords can also be found in the 16th century Sola Busca deck. Originating probably in Venice. The Sola Busca is one of the few tarot decks that created distinctive imagery for the minor arcana. In early versions, most designed these cards the simple way we designed playing cards. The 4 of coins has only 4 coins on it, not the little man clutching his coins to his chest. Many decks added whimsical flourishes, but they weren't necessarily connected to what we understand as being the meaning of the card today. And in my deck, the Tarot of the She, well, this lady, Emily Carding, just downloaded the images and painted them very quickly with watercolor, I believe. So she would have known about the tarot. She would have been experienced in the tarot, so she would have been kind of connected to the imagery of the archetypes, but the rest was just a flow coming from her mind, man. So yeah, I mean, if you have you looked at tarot cards recently? Do you know that, like, in terms of physical items, if you go to a bookstore, the kind of shops that would sell tarot decks, those are the biggest sellers by far. Big sellers. That's why you find them under lock and key, because they're also the most shoplifted item in shops that have them, because they are high value. Not, I'm talking about financially high value, and you can stash them quite easily. You can put them in your pocket and sneak out the door with them. So the security measures and issues on tarot cards, it's a big deal. So you'll find them usually in cabinets now these days, because everyone steals them. How weird is that? It's not funny, but it's weird. Stolen tarot. Imagine the electromagnetic pulse you put onto one of them if you steal it. What kind of readings you're going to get? Perhaps those people that need the tarot the most, but they're just going to sell them, right? You buy a as new second-hand deck of cards, could be stolen. All right. So they're talking about the Sola Busca. For instance, the monkey gazing at his reflection in a hand mirror on the Minchiate's 4 of Cups has long been one of my favourite such flourishes. But I can't say that it's really enhanced my understanding of that particular card. From Italy, the tarot travelled to France, where the Marseilles deck was developed. This is the template from which most modern decks are derived. The major arcana stabilized this at this point, settling into the set of 22 trumps we use now. Before this, some decks had a Western Emperor and an Eastern Emperor instead of an Empress and an Emperor. But the Marseille became the template. And the wild variations in the decks faded away and the standard structure emerged. The Marseille is also when the tarot began to take on a more, let's say, mystical quality. Alchemical and astrological imagery began to show up on the cards, and it's around this time we have the first evidence that the cards were used for divination as well as game playing. Robert M. Place, in his book The Tarot, History, Symbolism, and Divination, points to a cycle of Venetian sonnets called the Merlini Kochai. I don't know how to say that. Julia will be angry at me. Merlini Kochai sonnets. Kochai being the pseudonym of the 16th century Italian poet Teofilo Fulengo, as containing the first written record of the cards being used for fortune telling. In the sonnets, the major arcana cards are used in a spread to foresee what will happen to the characters of the story. The written record about the occult use of the tarot begins in about the early 18th century. I know what you're thinking, or maybe not. Maybe you are less of a history dork than I am. Hey, isn't that around the time of the Enlightenment? Wasn't the whole point of the Enlightenment to totally get rid of all superstition and irrational belief? Yes. That was the point. But here's a little secret. Man cannot live on rationality alone. We're not machines. Our brains are not computers. Well, they're spiritual computers, guys. You can try shut off your dream world, your irrationality, your religious beliefs, your need for mystery and greater meaning, and so on. But most of us really do need that side of ourselves. If it were possible for man to be 100% rational about all things, then the French writer Voltaire, king of the Enlightenment, probably would have not been a crazy, racist anti-Semite. This book is special, man. This book is special. So at the time of the Enlightenment, there was the Counter-Enlightenment, focused mostly in Germany. The Counter-Enlightenment thing has argued for more enchantment, more untamed nature, less rationality. You might know these guys as the Romantics. They were philosophers, writers, poets, artists, although not all of them were German. But they fought against the influence of the Enlightenment and became influential themselves, which only goes to show that when you stake out a radical position, like the rational brain is the only thing that matters, all else is a weakness that must be overcome, you are nurturing the extreme opposite of your position into existence as well. Something that the Tarot's Chariot card knows very well. Part of the Counter-Enlightenment was the development of mystery cults. Starting in the 17th century, and you know guys, this is, obviously I'm just reading this book here. This was obviously written post 2020, definitely. So it is, it's a bit woke. Starting in the 17th century, we had Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. Both developed and spread esoteric knowledge. So the knowledge itself is not the cult, right? Although you had to be an initiated member to learn their secrets. Moving on, we had Theosophy, which is where my studies always end up pointing to, and how I get there is through tarot and dowsing. So that's why I study a fair amount of the theosophical tradition. But also, they made the most effort, well, between them and the Rosicrucians, they made the most effort on the children. And how children are is very objective. And so theosophical teachings about children and Rosicrucian teachings about children are a very safe bet if you want to know about say, early childhood education in terms of spirituality, in terms of natural law, in terms of that aspect of things, the otherworldly aspect of things, in connection with us and our reality, then yeah, Rosicrucianism and theosophy are pretty good places to look. And obviously anthroposophy. Of course, anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner, who was his own thing, obviously Rosicrucian influence, right? Okay. So we had Theosophy and Swedenborgianism, which are radically new religions, heavy on the mystical and philosophical side of belief. In the 19th century, the Counter-Enlightenment spread to America with spiritualism, and then names you're probably more familiar with. Groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, people like Helen Blavatsky, who co-founded the Theosophical Society. Okay, so I don't know the full thing, but obviously Theosophy is especially controversial, and I think a lot of these things are obviously easily misunderstood too. Not to defend anyone in particular, but like I said, looking at the mystery traditions and trying to find stuff about child development and, you know, kids and what's good for kids. Like I said, Theosophy, Rosicrucianism, and Anthroposophy have knowledge and information that's available on that stuff, and they're all pretty darn good. The Golden Dawn and other groups like it believed in magic and in the ability of the human will to change matter and the course of events. The question of why all of these systems started to develop around the same time is an interesting one. It was obviously answering a need in people, otherwise it wouldn't have spread the way it did. Part of that has to do with the Enlightenment and this focus on the rational mind. But part of that also can be traced to the evolution that Christianity was going through. Christianity was the dominant religion of the West. Protestantism was relatively new, but it had taken a firm hold, and the Catholic Church adapted to survive against the Protestant ideas, lest its power wane. Christianity was becoming more of a moral code, a system of preferred behaviors and a way of controlling the populace than before. Church services had been a sensory experience with incense and religious art and music and chanting, all designed to move a person spiritually and to create altered states, if you will. But the Protestant iconoclasts, who believed that religious imagery was idolatry, had destroyed much of the religious art and emptied the churches of their adornments. In place of the music and chanting came lectures on morality. Don't do this instead. I am oversimplifying this to preserve space, but there is an enormous difference in the role of religion in the medieval church and its subsequent role post-Reformation. Some of the primary differences were the removal of artwork and imagery from the religious ceremonies, increased policing of behavior, and de-emphasizing the role of mystery and intuition in a person's life. And that reminds me of my life in the church growing up. And perhaps this is a rebellion against that, but this is where I've gone. And I think intuition and, you know, the intuition and the mystery, that can easily be removed no matter what you're into. Even spirituality. But by staking out their radical position, they nurtured their extreme opposites position too. That sense of magic and wonder had answered a call on the human soul, and so it would not be discarded so quickly. New systems of belief, which put the mystery at the very heart of its teachings, began to develop. The cults themselves might have disappeared by now, but much of what they revived interest in, from tarot to astrology to meditation, can be found in contemporary culture with the rise of Wicca, and other pagan religions and other systems of irrational belief, the Golden Dawn had probably the most influence on our contemporary understanding of the tarot. For this group of magicians and mystics, it was one tool of many in their magical system that pulled from sources like the Rosicrucians and the Kabbalah. One of the Golden Dawn's founders, Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, wrote the first guide to the tarot in England. The Tarot, its occult signification, use in fortune telling, and methods of play. You can still get that today. Published in 1888, the same year the Golden Dawn came into existence, established tarot as a magical tool and standardized the deck. The Golden Dawn actually didn't last very long. Infighting and power plays, mostly by the male members, splintered the group. Its most famous member was perhaps the Irish poet William Butler Yeats, who remained interested in and engaged with magical systems until his death. The writer and magician Aleister Crowley is often associated with the group, but he was quickly ejected from its ranks for being a terrible person. But two of its lesser-known members would spread the influence of the tarot far and wide. Writer Arthur Edward Waite and artist Pamela Colman Smith. While Mathers might have standardized the deck's layout, Waite and Smith standardized its imagery. The Rider-Waite deck. So how did the deck come about? Arthur Waite was a mystic and a scholar with ties to both the Golden Dawn and the Freemasons. He had written extensively on many esoteric subjects such as alchemy, mysticism, and the various mystery cults to which he belonged. Here, Waite's scholarly and mystical interests played an important role in the fate of the tarot. Waite believed that the magical systems of the Golden Dawn and other systems were not about imposing your will on a situation, or about telling the future. He believed they were for elevating the soul and for bringing what is unconscious conscious. He believed there was a divine order, and our job was to align ourselves with it, or become a conduit, like the magician in the tarot. For Waite, there is a higher purpose for a person's existence, and mysticism is a tool to find that purpose and follow it. And, thank God for the tarot in that regard. To help that process along best, he would need a tarot deck that was designed with these goals specifically in mind. The deck, he thought, needed to be reworked with an emphasis on its symbolism. Okay. So Smith was brought to the Golden Dawn by her friend Yeats, a talented artist. She had illustrated books by both Yeats and Bram Stoker. By the time she was introduced to Waite, he was struck by her use of symbolism and by her artistry, and they began their collaboration. So it's really interesting, guys, that it's like a creative thing too. Like reading this kind of brings it back to just humans creating things. I know there's a bit more to it than that, right? All right. For a long time, it was assumed that Smith simply drew what Waite told her to draw, that she was, in a way, just taking his dictation. But recently, scholarship suggests that she was much more in control of the imagery and the symbolism than thought previously. Waite provided much of the scholarship, and in many cases, the imagery of the Sola Busca provided inspiration. But Smith brought her own talent and knowledge to the deck. And it's a shame that she has been sidelined from the story for so long. I was waiting for that. We all knew that was coming, right? All right. So what's important there is that it was a person with some creative control. Control not really being the right word. Creative function. All right. So it marks the Arthur Edward Waite, the Rider Waite Smith. Okay, so this lady really wants to push this lady's art, and that's fine. Yes. So yeah, tarot cards, they share their knowledge with others and then expand on those meanings. They're talking about the creation of the cards. They tell one another stories about the cards, thereby creating even more complex patterns and meanings, and then it becomes as if it would never without them. All right. So and then you get to oh, let me just fix myself up here, eh? My chair keeps falling down. All right, so yeah, interesting that tarot is kind of made up, but that's the thing about fairy tales, right? That I'm a bit nutty about. Excuse me. That I think the fairy tales are a dramatic, like tarot sequence, like you could pick up a tarot card, some tarot cards, do a reading with creating a fairy tale in mind, and then you will have a tale that works and a tale that works on a deeper level too, in my opinion. So we're going to go to the Oracle of the Trees. Yeah, because trees are one of these tools in the toolkit. Trees are things that can help you and want to help you, and they can be a source of intuition, a source of receiving messages or help or suggestions or downloads, that sort of thing. It's a true story. So if you do like nature and you do like trees, yeah, get a little kooky on it. Reach out to a tree that reaches out to you. The tree reaches out to you because you noticed it and you like that tree. And so, talking about the tarot makes me think of being an individual, being yourself, following your life path, which is also in accordance with natural law. If you understand those spiritual things, then it's like, what are you going to do? How do we step to the beat of our own drum is the question I'm going to ask today. Okay? Right. So I'll just, do my little ceremony I do in my head. Okay, so the question is we're asking the trees, how are we going to step to the beat of our own drum? And the trees especially want to help us with this. And I'm just doing it in my way. And you see, the thing is, like, this is the kind of thing I really want to do. With dowsing, my pendulum. I got my pendulum here. This is a pendulum that helps me decide what I'm going to do in my show. And look how rudimentary that is. That is some caveman style pendulum there, guys. And we're going to revisit the stone episode. We're going to do some more about stones. But yeah, I spent time essentially collecting rocks, doing earth feng shui. And that's how I found out a lot about these things. That's how I found out a lot about trees and how trees can be an intuitive tap in. Much like a tarot. So like if you are listening and you think that's a bit weird, and I do too, and I'm a weirdo, so if you do tarot or like oracle cards, these are oracle cards, how does the card just pop out and that card ends up being like, oh yeah? Are they all just, every card is just like, yeah, you're awesome. Yeah, you're awesome. So you pull one out, like, yeah, you're awesome. You're like, yeah, that's true. I am awesome. No way. No way. There's something going on that pops out the card that you need to read. And there's a resonance to what's going on in your life at the time. Or, obviously, the question. Okay, so the question here is, how do we step to the beat of our own drum? Where was I going with that? Yeah, back to the trees. That's how I found out about the trees and the doubt, everything. Starting with cards. And then someone gave me a pendulum, and it was kind of like turning the environment into tarot. Because everything is a symbol, and every symbol has a deeper meaning. Have I gone too far with it? Well, I don't know. But that's what I like to do. And I can get all kinds of answers from the pendulum. I think it's the challenge is balance, finding balance. Coming up for air, because you don't want to be asking too many questions about things you don't need to ask about. And I'm a little bit guilty of that because I find it a learning journey. And anyway, the first card here, number 20. Let's try and get that going nice. The Tree of the Dead. Here we go. I need a little stand to put that on and a little camera. So the Tree of the Dead, there's what looks like a Grim Reaper with wings holding a bowl. There's an hourglass, there's a scythe. And there's a tree. So we're just going to, I don't claim to be super expert. I just go to the book and then we figure out. If I'm not sure, then I'll douse. And yeah. So you'll notice, like, if you actually paid for a tarot reading, if you went online and you got a tarot reading, obviously you don't, like, it's not going to look good if you're like, I'm just going to go to the book and have a look and I'll get the answer for you. But you can still get the answer, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still going to intuitively, something's going to resonate. And that's not just choosing the thing that suits you. And that's where the dowsing comes in, the pendulum. Gives you a okay or a nay okay. The point of the story is this is like a tree oracle reading. I don't know exactly, but what I'm trying to say is, if I had no book and you were like, well, prove to me that you know what you're doing. Well, I'd say, well, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. This is just what I do. So the Tree of the Dead. So it'd obviously be about making some kind of transformation or stopping. It's like the death card in the tarot, right? And because it's a tree, there's a regeneration. There's something about that. Or it's to say, stop doing a certain thing. Well, I'll tell you, I actually pulled 2 cards out. And because 2 cards popped out, these are together. Because normally, how do I know that? Well, normally one comes out. Sometimes 3 or 4 come out. And then I consider them to be a pair, if they're 2. And here's a second card. It's the family tree. Get it? So that's being a bit more symbolic about trees, being the family tree. So I'm saying, for me, it's about probably, if this was a personal reading, it would be making a change within the family, or breaking the ties in the family tree, breaking off one of the branches, something like that. But let's look at the Tree of the Dead, number 26. The symbolism. In Islamic mythology, the Tree of the Dead is a great tree whose leaves are inscribed with the names of all men. The leaves that fall are gathered by Azrael, the angel of death, who calls the name of each man destined to die. Azrael does not know the date of death in advance. Only when God decides that the moment has come, does a leaf fall from the tree that grows at the foot of his divine throne. It is then that Azrael reads the name written on the fallen leaf, and within 40 days separates the soul from the body of the person whose name was written. So first thing that's coming out is separation. So I might be biased, that's why I douse in the end. Azrael, also called Israel, is one of the 4 archangels in the Islamic tradition, along with Gabriel, Michael, and Israfil, whose Judeo-Christian counterpart is Raphael. Of cosmic stature and strength, Azrael is described as an angel so large that if all the water of the seas and rivers in the world were poured into his head, not a single drop would fall to earth. He is seated in either the 4th or the 7th heaven on a throne of light, with 1 foot on the bridge that connects heaven and hell. According to some, Azrael has 70,000 feet and 4,000 wings, and his body is covered by tongues and eyes equal in number to the number of all living people. According to Islamic tradition, when Allah sent the 4 archangels to take 7 handfuls of earth to make man, Azrael was the only one able to perform the task, while the other 3 argued about how many handfuls each of them was supposed to take back. When God created death, he designated Azrael as its master. This is why he is also known as Malak al-Maut, which literally means angel of death. So keywords, according to the book, related to the card. Change undergone. Breaking with the past. And that's what I think is happening here. Breaking with the past. So yeah, I did freestyle it pretty well. Well, I am freestyling it, have freestyled it pretty well thus far. Resistance to change, necessary endings, new opportunities, and new beginnings. Yeah. So that's sort of where I'm at. Referring to the book and dowsing and just building up my blah, blah, blah when I do the reading. Because that's part of what I really want to do. I love doing it, and what I get out of it is very helpful, and thankfully learning or understanding natural law, thanks to Mark Passio's work, and obviously all that ancillary material and pathways to go down and learn more about it. Thanks to that, I can do this and kind of know be more in tune with what I'm receiving, because I understand what the right thing to do is and the wrong thing to do is, rather than it's all just subjective. So yeah, the card simply alludes to the inevitability of certain important changes. Now in this book they say that will soon take place in the Seeker's life. So those things do happen, but a lot of these books obviously what's the word? It's a bit more fortune-telling-ish, because that's what people want to know. People want to know, will next week be fine? When really, will next week be fine when I catch that flight? And the answer is going to really be, yes, you should catch that flight, or no, you should not catch that flight. And then why? It's really like a trivium thing. Does that make sense? If people want things to be predetermined, when there is a predetermined thing, and if you're sitting there asking someone, yielding to them and asking them for advice on whether you should do this thing or not next week, then it is predetermined, because you're not doing anything about it. You're asking someone else to tell you what you should do. So then it becomes a suggestion. Should you fly to Tehran tomorrow? Assuming that there are flights available. Should you fly there tomorrow? Well, should you? The answer will probably be no, because you're asking the tarot, you're not sure that you want to go, you don't feel good about it, and you're looking for a pat on the back. And tarot will give you a pat on the back. And the book will tell you, oh, absolutely good. And say the book says you good things will happen. But, you know, you can't control whether that plane's going down or not. I don't know. Does that make sense, everybody? And I think that there is a bit of, you know, sit back and let the universe provide. There is an aspect of that. It depends what you're doing. But I think people are looking for a bit of sit back and let the universe provide more than actually the taking action. For me, believe it or not, it is more about sitting back a little bit, as in keep doing what I'm doing and good things will happen. And that's the part I struggle with, where I'm trying to make things work, make things happen when I'm already doing them. I'm doing them with a sense of want when the sense of want needs to go. So these things, you start boiling the stuff down a heck of a lot. Yeah, so the card tells us that some things need to change in order to make room for others. This could mean the end of a job or relationship, a transfer. Okay, so they do, in this book, it is very people, places, things, love life, work life, leisure life. Like, it is very much like that in the book. So, advice. Let's go straight to the advice. Do not let the past be an obstacle to your future. All right? So, the apple needs to fall from the tree. Our parents messed us up, and at the same time, we should be grateful to them for giving us life. And that's where all the shadow work comes into, right? Self-reflection. You may have to go to like therapy or something like that to be aware of what the heck you're doing. That shows you the issues, that your behaviors that you're doing. They're where the problem lies. Tarot can lead you to that. Once you realize the things that you're doing that you don't like doing that are wrong, you can get into emotional freedom technique, tapping, and that will clear it up. That's all effort and work and takes time. Tarot will help point you in the right direction. Yeah. Oftentimes it's things just to do with balancing life out a bit, doing more exercise or more of something else that you're not doing. Having a more holistic life. So that's what the trees want to help you with. Marching, stepping to the beat of your own drum. There's part of your family dynamic that you need to separate from. Stop telling me what to do, Mom. It is kind of that. Breaking away. Easier said than done. For sure. I think people's lives are dictated by that so much more than people want to admit. Because there's going to be compromise in that, right? Or not. Depends what you really want to do and how much that means to you. And who approves of that and who doesn't. And how accepted you are or not accepted in your family. What their expectations are. And what your expectations are based on what you know now. I think most of the time there is a tie that doesn't get cut. That has to get cut. And when we're young children, we're toddlers, there has to be a tie. There has to be a tie between the parent and the child. A religious tie. A cult type of tie. Locked in. And most of us don't even get that. We don't achieve that. And this is where all the Jungian child archetype not overcoming into, adult archetypes or whatever, being stuck in these child repressive archetypes, we didn't get the correct bond, the correct tie, the correct bind with the adults in our life, or the parent in our life, or parents. And that creates, I guess, an issue with ties within the family, an issue with ties externally. And these things need to be rectified, managed, completely broken off, cut off. There might be just simple little dynamics, emotional things. Yeah, so there we go. So, to step to the beat of your own drum, you got to look inside your family dynamic, see what's wrong, and do something about that. Check out past episodes of Otherworld Connections to see what kind of solutions there are to those things. The hard thing is recognizing it. And I do think, believe it or not, if you do understand, like if you're like in the truth community, you know a bit about, these things like natural law and stuff, then talking like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, all those kind of things are actually probably going to be good, because you have a tie with the truth. You have a bond with objective reality. So you could talk to someone. Hopefully you meet a good person, and they're just gonna play the game with you and throw things back at you. They're going to be the mirror that maybe you can't look in. So there is the soul scrying, the looking in the mirror and being honest with yourself, speaking to yourself about, what's wrong with you and what happened to you, all that sort of thing. Telling yourself what you actually are and what you've done and where you've been. I think it's very hard. It's too hard for some, too hard for most, impossible for most. People would rather die than actually do that, than face themselves. If you do want to go down that route, because you've heard that from Mark Passio, a good step in that right direction, rather than just pretending that you've done it, a good step in that direction is you can, at New Age shops, buy mirrors that have prints over them, so you can kind of half look at yourself in the mirror. And there are called guardian angel mirrors. I think those are really good because they're a step in that direction. And when you look at the mirror, there's an image of what you can just say to yourself as your guardian angel, kind of helping you, right? It's like a handhold to mirror scrying, to soul scrying. I think those are really good. Okay. So now, just got the... we've got 2 minutes. I'll just try and get one card and we'll see. Here we go. All right. It's the Dancer King from the Tarot of the She, Emily Carding. So Dancer is cups. So it's King of Cups. So it's about mastering your emotions, taking control of your feelings. And this is really a time-ready thing. 2025, I think most of us, if we do have issues, it's to do with controlling our feelings. Let's go to it in the book. Dancer King. Great spirit of the sunken sea, Lord of heartbreaks, wisdom he. Know well both peace and ancient war, the fire within, the ocean's roar. Key words: experienced, wise, deep, introverted, emotional, turbulent, fascinating. So that's to do with marching to the beat of your own drum. I would say getting in touch with your feelings and getting in control of them. Shadow work required. Alright, thanks so much for tuning in. That's the stuff that I really want to do. Readings and helping people in that way. Dowsing episodes coming soon too. And we'll be looking at fairy tales, obviously. Decoding fairy tales. Continuing that series. Much love, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you at the next one.